Okay, ladies, finally the video on edging our crochet 2 squares. I know it was promised. It has been an event to make it happen. So first of all, I want to cover some basic information with you before we go further. You should all have this handout. Please read it. It's important. I didn't put anything on there that you don't need. And many of the questions that you're going to ask me would be answered by reading it, such as the first round of color, the first round of edging is the same color as your square. And the last round is your edging color, meaning if you're edging the dark squares, in my case, that was also the edging color. If you're edging the dark squares, you will have 2 rounds of dark edging. But if you're edging a light square, then the first round will be the color of the square, and then you'll change colors and do a round of the dark color. Most of the time, we're going to be starting in the corner, pick a corner and go. Sometimes your yarn might still be attached, especially as you've been going along. If you left some yarn attached, you could start it with the yarn that's attached. That would be fine. But if it's not, you're going to start in an upper corner stitch. Probably best if we think in terms of an upper right-hand corner, but it doesn't have to be that way. One of the things starting in an upper right-hand corner will do for you is help you to orient the squares as you go to assemble them. So if you've not been putting the square number on a little tag in the upper right-hand corner, make a point of doing that. That way, when you start to assemble them, you know number 1, the right side, and you know number 2, the upper right-hand corner. It would be horrible to try to put squares together instead of like this. That would be an issue. So, the only other thing that I really want to point out to you before we go any farther is to say that the last row of edging must have the same count on all sides of all the squares. It will not be okay. I know that you want to do that. You go 1 stitch, well, no biggie. But if it's 1 stitch too many on one and 1 stitch too few on the other, it's technically 2 stitches. And the reality is, of course, somebody's done it. I mean, it's the reason I bring it up. Somebody has done it, and the end result is messy. It just looks odd. It's messy, and we don't really know the reason why. And it's because they've played with the numbers in trying to assemble it. Okay. The other note I want to bring up is our squares will have first 30 stitches between the corners. It'll have corner stitches. These do not count in the 30 stitch count. The next round will have 32. That 32 will include this stitch, but not the corner stitches. If we have measured your squares, and ladies, I really discourage you from edging squares that have not been double checked. If you're really certain they match, okay, but if you're not certain, really need to double check them. And I know that's going to take some time to make that happen, but it would be worth it. Some of you have squares that I've already checked, and I've told you that you need an extra round of edging. And that extra round of edging will start with 28. So you'll have 30 when you would be going into the last 2 rounds, which would be normal. Be aware. Everybody's square. It's stunning how well these numbers work, regardless of the size of your squares. That has to do with the gauge at which they were worked. Some of the squares, I am aware, may have 42 stitches in them, and you're only going to want to do 30. That's important. Okay, best to start with the granny square squares. So I've made a little wee one here for you to see. for us to practice on. So best to start with granny squares because they have active stitches on all the sides. They don't have the weird edges. How do I put it in? Where do I look? To learn, this first jump into learning how to edge is easiest to accomplish if you do it on a granny square because stitches already present. The first thing I'm going to do for you is to do, quote unquote, the rabbit in the hole. Remember, don't look it up on the internet because it doesn't exist. That was a name that Charlie gave it to explain what was going to happen. I'm going to do that to finish this off for you so that you can see it. I've threaded my yarn up. It's jumped straight up out of the hole. It's going to come over. We're going to duplicate this stitch. To do that, I'm going to come over here and go through there. And then I'm going to come straight back. Don't go like this because the yarn doesn't do that. Come straight back down into the hole and pull it through, size it up so that it looks like the rest of its friends. On this particular pattern, I can go like, now I realize some of you are not left-handed, and I am. So that makes this a whole lot of things that are not easy for me. This is one that is. I'm just going to weave this in and out the top. I'm going to be careful when I pull so that I don't mess that up. Pull it too tight. And now it's gone. And look how tidy that is. You almost can't tell that you've done it. I know that I have because look, I can see the beginning chain of the round right there. So I know that that's the stitch that I created. Charlie, the lady I worked with years and years, I was her aide, taught me this, and she called it the rabbit in the hole. So that's what we're looking for. Now that we've done that, let's get started. My yarn is not attached, but I am going to make the first round the same color as the square. So it is going to be in this teal color, turquoise. I'm going to start, I hold the yarn. Now I do this. It's easiest for me. How you accomplish that, up to you. What I'm looking for is I'm going to go into the corner stitch. I'm going to grab the yarn and pull up a loop. I'm going to take this tail and I'm going to put it between the hook and my finger. Watch. Do you see that? See if you can see what I'm doing. Round. Now, when I chain one and tighten that up just a little bit, I'm going to work over the tail, but it's also been a little secured. Look at, they're not going to be loose. So I've chained one. I'm going to work a single crochet, a half double crochet, and a single crochet in the corner. In this case, corner space. It could be a corner stitch. That would be good as well. Then, in our example, I need to space 30 stitches between, let's see if you guys can see, 30 stitches to the next corner space. Now, obviously, mine is tiny. I have at most 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15. I have at most 15 stitches. If I put 30 in this little tiny wee square, it would look ridiculous. 30 is the number you want for your squares. So if I counted, a couple of ways I can make this happen. I can count the number of stitches I have, and then maybe I have to add 2 here and here and here to bring it to 30. That's possible. I can also fold the square in half, mark the middle, know that I have to have 15 by there. That's kind of a lot. 15 is kind of a lot. I can fold that in half again and mark the quarter. So I know I have to have 7, 1, 7 to the middle. That's 15. Do the same thing out the other side. So there's 2 ways to go about this. And truthfully, it really depends on the pattern you're working with, the square. It also depends on how you see things. Some people see multiples very easily. So I can see that there's 4 sets of 3. I can start to think what's going to happen to get 30 in there. Sometimes we need to fold them. Sometimes I fold them because there's nothing to look at. There's no specific things to see to mark the stitches. So both methods are equally good. Some of you will default to one or the other method happier. Neither one's right. In fact, both just depends on what you're doing as to how well they work. So I'm going to space stitches. If I have to, I'm going to go in this one first. This is just me crocheting along to get to the other corner. If I had to increase, let's say 2 stitches. Let's pretend for a minute. I might put one now by putting 2 stitches in one, but I'm not going to put the second one I need to increase until a few stitches away. I'm going to space them out along the edge. I don't in any way want to stack them up. I really don't want them right next to the corner because that's already got business in it. I don't want to be wowing that out, making it look funny. So I'm going to space them out, and I'm probably not going to hide them right next to the corner. I'm going to work all the way over, and then I'm going to do my corner. If you guys were counting this, you would go 30, 27, 28, 29, 30, and now I'm going to put the corner in the next space. Single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet. If there was not a space, those 3 stitches would go in the corner stitch, all 3 of them in the corner stitch, and then I'm going to begin counting going off again. Now, rather than work all the way around this little square, because that's just going to take time, I'm going to pull out, we're going to do a pretend. This is the, Rachel Ray method of crochet. I'm going to show you how to start again. Look, I'm going to grab a hold of the tail. I'm going to pull up. I'm going to put the yarn between the hook and the yarn. I'm going to chain 1. I'm going to put my stitch in, and then I'm going to start working, and that allows me to work over the tail. You'll remember from previous demonstrations, it also kind of secures the tail. It doesn't flop around so much. So what I'm doing is I'm going back. I'm going to pretend that now I've got, but here's the deal in this one. I have one here. There's the half double crochet. So now I want to make sure that I have 30 and into the corner. That's 30 and slip stitch to the corner. If I was going to continue with this color, then I would chain 1, single crochet in that stitch. Now I'm going to do the corner in the next stitch, the half double crochet, single, half double, single. Because if I was very careful to count, I should naturally now have 32 stitches between that half double crochet, the one I just worked into, and the next half double crochet. I should have 32 stitches. It is worth it to count in case you mucked it up. Seriously, and believe it or not, the reason I suggest that is because when I was doing it and counting, and I'm pretty good at counting, I still had 1 or 2 where I was a stitch short or a stitch over. So this would be 2 rounds the same color. The issue that you're going to find, remember we're going to have 30 stitches between the half double crochets, 32 on this round. There is my corner. That one is part of our 32. It's one in a savings account, if you will, because it's on the side. It's the equivalent of the one before the next stitch. So you're going to come up and have 30, 31, and then 32 will be, you'll slip stitch it into that stitch, and it will be number 32 and rabbit in the hole. If you're going to change colors, should talk about that. Okay. If your color, and I made a silly job of this, I'll show you why in a second. I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to cut the tail. I'm going to pull straight up. Don't tug on that. You want to leave it big enough. I'm going to thread up my yarn and needle, and I'm going to rabbit in the hole. So to rabbit in the hole, do you see how this loop I just made is not quite wanting to cover that one? I'm going to make sure that it does. Did you see that I had to pull up on it a little bit, stretch it out a little bit? If when you pull up and, when you took the hook out of it, if you pull on this, watch what happens. Oh, Lord, now it's just too small. So you're going to have to go back and open it back up so it's the side of the stitch that it's covering. And then we come over here because we're going to duplicate this next stitch. And we're going to go straight back in to the hole we came out of. And there's our little rabbit in the hole. This time, I'm going to run it through the back of the work so that you can see there's an alternate method. You can hide it. If you're really concerned about your yarn coming out, what if the ends? So I went a ways this direction. Now I'm going to turn around and I'm going to go back a bit this way. Hold on. And now, hold that. There's no way that's going to come loose. I can trim this right at the back of the piece. Now that I've finished off, here's where I made my mistake. Remember I told you the edging is... Sorry, my dogs. Remember I told you the edging is the dark color? Ouch! I brought light colored yarn so I could show you. Ew. Okay. I didn't think that through very clearly. And I thought of it just as I was doing this. So now I'm going to find the top of the half double crochet. I'm going to join my yarn, flop my tail between my hook and the yarn, chain one, and work my corner. Single, half double, single, and now I'm working that last round of edging where I should have 32 stitches. Be sure and count. If you don't, let's pretend for a second that you don't. You have one too few, so you only have 31 stitches. Don't pull it out. There's no need. Don't pull it out. Add another stitch along the edge, just like you did to get to 30 last time. If you're over, then it would be okay to decrease. So, couple of ways to decrease. The norm, go in and pull up a loop, go into the next stitch and pull up a loop. Now you have essentially two bottoms, but only one top, and it got rid of a stitch. And while you can see it's a little bit different, it's not horrid, it's not a big gaping spot. The other place you might want, if I found out as I was crocheting along, oh my goodness, crud, I have one too many. A good place to hide missing a stitch, hold on, is right here at the corner. That one wants to be, can you see that it wants, there's a stitch right there, wants to be covered over. So if I had one too many, I could cover over there, and it may not be as evident. That depends. Okay, up to you. Crochet's choice. At this point, I think we've covered edging as well. I can't think of other questions. I'm going to trust that when you get this and you try it, if you have questions, be sure and alert me, and I will get back to you and answer as best I can. All right, girls, keep at it. I look forward to the next time we're together and seeing what you've done. Take care.